All right, welcome back in to the Long Shot podcast. We are joined by one of my favorite players in the league. And I'm not just saying that. I don't say that for every intro. I mean that wholeheartedly. A fan favorite of many as well. TJ McConnell, welcome to the Long Shot.
Well, let me just start off by saying thank you for having me. And you're one of my favorites as well. I'm not just saying that to reciprocate. You are one of my favorites as well. Trust me.
That felt like it was a little bit in the moment that you felt obligated to return that compliment. I'll take it for what it is. But no, I mean that wholeheartedly. I've been a fan of your game for quite some time. As an undrafted player myself, I feel like you've kind of really been carrying the baton for us undrafted folk. And I think you kind of embody the undrafted persona as well as anybody. And I'm just curious, I just want to get right down to the root of it all. Where do you think that the grit, the fire, the competitive spirit, like, is that just harvested from, the growing up in Pittsburgh? Is it transferring small college to high major? Like, what is it? Son of a coach? You got a long lineage of examples.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can take bits and pieces from everything that you just said, but like let's be honest, like I'm not athletic. I'm not tall. I'm not, I don't shoot the ball like you. So like what can I do that like I can control and like not a ton of people do is just play my ass off, like play incredibly hard and just make life miserable for people I'm playing against and push the pace on offense and be as disruptive as I can on defense. I feel like that's something that I can totally control that really doesn't, I guess you could call it a skill, but it's something that I kind of tip my hat to and just get so locked into the game. And I guess, like I said, it just take bits and pieces from everything, but also I wasn't blessed with long arms and the ability to jump out the gym or a pretty jump shot like yourself.
You keep mixing in the compliments towards me. I'm gonna have to nip that right here. So moving forward, please, can we refrain from doing that? But you say I firmly believe that playing hard is a skill, and you do it masterfully. But I'm curious, like when people say like, oh, he's such a great shooter. He talks about myself, and that's not me patting myself on the back, but when they kind of put me in that box, it's very much a compliment, and I've loved hearing it, but there are also times where it's like, it's kind of exactly that, where people are just want to kind of put you in this corner. I feel like when people say, oh, well, TJ just plays hard, like that's all he is. I personally feel like that is severely underselling what you bring to the table. Like you have an incredible way to manipulate the game, your basketball IQ, the way you create opportunities for others, the way you kind of masterfully navigate like time and situation throughout end of quarters, like all those sorts of things. Do you feel like it's kind of not like disrespectful, but it's not really giving you the credit you deserve to just be like, oh, well, TJ just plays hard as shit?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard it so much that it's like I've gotten numb to it. I feel like the fact of the matter is like, you pretty much nailed it. Like there's stuff that I do that, people say I just play hard, but it doesn't show up on a stat sheet. So I feel like that's why people always say it. And I'm cool with it. If people want to think I only play hard and then just kind of, overlook me, that's cool. I feel like they learn pretty quick that I just do more than play hard. And, I appreciate you saying that, but at the same time, it doesn't bother me that people, kind of think that I just play hard. But I've heard it so much. So, I kind of just goes in one ear and out the other.
TJ, I got the opportunity to sit courtside for the first time a couple weeks ago, and this is not me bragging. I was at a game in Brooklyn. Tommy and JJ had an extra ticket. They let me sneak in. That's all it was. But it was amazing to me. It was the first time I'd watched a game that close. It was amazing to me how little space there was. Like, that was my biggest takeaway. In half court sets, there is no space at all. You got a bunch of 7-foot guys with 7-foot wingspans taking up the entire 3-point line and in. I can't ask Duncan this question because he doesn't go inside the 3-point line, but as someone who makes a living off like penetration in some mid-range game, what is it like, a guy your size trying to find space in an NBA half court set? It's just, it was baffling to me how long these guys are and how much space they take up.
Yeah. I mean, and I feel like Duncan can attest to this. He does go inside the 3-point line sometimes, but the margin for error when you get inside the 3-point line and your head's not on a swivel, it's so small. One mistake and there's people are covering ground. Like, before you know it, there's 4 or 5 guys surrounding you and you kind of panic. So when I'm in there, I kind of just like to get to my spots. I really don't try to do too much while I'm in there. I just read what the defense is doing, but getting to my spots and getting to my mid-range, I've kind of tried to perfect throughout my career. And I'm sorry you had to see the performance that I put on in Brooklyn at that game. I apologize for that.
You talk about getting to your spots, and any team that prepares for a TJ McConnell led group knows that you have your kind of moves that you get to. My favorite being that kind of like midi after the dribble through, kind of like pull up, which you think over and over, like, oh, we should be able to like block that or something. He's, 6 feet, whatever. We have like a 6'3", 6'4" guard on him. Like, he shouldn't be able to get that off, but you do every single time. How, like, from a skill development standpoint, how have you kind of like learned how to find those spots, whether it be in the off season, whether it be throughout the season, whether it be with working with a coaching staff, watching film? How have you kind of learned, like, okay, these are the areas in which I can be effective? Because I imagine it's very different than obviously how you played in high school, but also how you played in college as well.
Yeah. I feel like it's a feel thing. Like, what kind of screens am I going to be using? Like you've played against me. I use deep corner pick and rolls and I get to the middle. I use step ups, and then that's when I take that one dribble on the baseline and kind of get that jump shot up there. But like, I feel like for the most part, and I don't know if you agree with this or not, but I feel like I'm able to get to those shots because people don't think I'm going to shoot them. When I come off a deep corner pick and roll, I'm looking for someone to pass it to, but then I know that everyone's kind of going back out to their man. That's when I kind of surprise people and look right up at the basket and jump really quick and make those jump shots. It's kind of just watching film, the way teams play me, and the flow of the game, whether I'm getting step ups or deep corner pick and rolls more.
Yeah. You talk about the way teams play you. One thing that's always really impressed me is that, and this isn't throwing shade, but a lot of teams will go under your ball screens, right? And whether it you'll have the big twist it or flip it so you can get in the paint. But one thing that I've noticed you do really, really well is you'll actually outrun an under. So someone will go under your screen and you'll still find a way to get in the paint. Is that also just kind of like learning how to play in pick and roll? Because so much of the NBA is like, once a team figures out what you want to do, like, for example, for me, I had to adjust, like, what's your adjustment to the adjustment? And as a pick and roll player, like, you need to get in the paint and create for others. So defensively, it's like, all right, we'll keep them out of the paint by going under, but you still find a way repeatedly over and over to find your way into the paint.
Yeah. And I mean, I've worked on my 3, and like, let's be honest, like me, when they go under, me pulling up with 15, 14 on the clock, that's not the best shot we can get. So as you know, like when you go under on someone, it's like kind of hard, like to like feel where they're going unless they kind of just like, they're not really attacking downhill. But if you go under on someone and then the ball handler goes just as hard downhill when you're going under, it's really hard to get back in front. So I saw someone do that. I forget who it was. And I kind of have tried to implement that into my game because I'm pretty quick. And when guys go under, I feel like they kind of just expect me to kind of just get off the ball and go. But I mean, I don't want to like kill a possession, but when they go under, I try to beat them to the basket, make one guy help. That's all it takes is one guy rotating over and then just creating a problem and going from there.
By the way, I feel like this is a good time to acknowledge that you're shooting 40% from three this year. So for all you people going under ball screens, you might want to reconsider.
I was going to say, Dunk, he's also taking 2 times the amount of his career average. He's up to over 1 a game, like 1.5 a game. So yeah, the under screen might be over.
So basically you shoot more threes than I take in a game in 1 quarter. It's basically what's being said.
Yeah, but that's all I do. You know what I mean? Like it's like that's not even like a fair comparison. Like the amount of paint touches you get in one shift, like 1 6-8 minute shift, is as many as I might get in a 2 or 3 game span.
But like that's not all. Like just because like you think that's all you do, like do you know how much attention you give and it helps your teammates? It's ridiculous. Not to mention, let's say this, because I've seen it over and over and over. People try to go at you on defense. It's happened to me. It's the white guy thing. I think you get tested every time in a game, and you answer the bell every time. I feel like your defense is very, very, very underrated.
Wow. We're gonna have to clip that little part out.
Yeah, I was gonna
post that everywhere. That we have a first team all defense candidate out here saying that I can really defend. You actually bring up a really interesting point of being called out. I'm curious as to when in your career did that start to shift? Like when did you start to get some respect on the defensive end of like, all right, because I imagine early on they were calling out the small undrafted guard quite a bit, and then like was there a noticeable shift?
Yeah, well, I mean, my first game of my career, Isaiah Thomas gave me 30, and it was like one of the most like it was insane. Like Brad Stevens, like every time down, like again, same play, and he scored on it like 5 straight times, and I'm like, am I really good enough to play in the NBA? Like after that game. And then I don't know, one of my coaches was like, why don't you try like picking up full court? And he's like, no one does it. And he's like, let's get you in great shape, world-class shape, and pick up full court and just be a pest throughout the entire possession. And I feel like once I locked in and honed in on that, people still try to go at me, but I feel like I've gained some respect as a defender.
I mean, a triple double with steals will do that as well. That was a historic night. I was tuning into that game live on League Pass at halftime. I turned it on because I think you had like 7 steals at half or 8?
What my coach came up to me, I was like, do you know what you're doing? And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, you have 9 steals at halftime. I was like, there's no way that's true.
That was unbelievable. I can't even fathom what that would feel like. Like when I get like two steals or like 5 deflections in a game, I literally feel like I'm Scottie Pippen out there. You know what I mean? And you're out here just getting 9 steals and a half. Absolutely electrifying stuff. What do you remember from like that night in particular?
It was just one of those games where I don't know, I was in the right place at the right time. Kind of just all over the place, getting my hands on everything, and we were losing for most of that game. And I was just trying to like will us back and trying to get a win. And, when my coach came up to me at halftime, I was like, I thought he was like joking, but because I knew I had a good amount of steals, but it felt like 4 or 5. So when he said 9, it was, I don't know, it was incredible. I'm just glad we won though.
So you're not the kind of guy that counts his own stats during a game?
I mean, I feel like as a player, you're lying if you say you don't look up at the stat line on the scoreboard. Like every player does it. I promise you. But like when he said the 9 steals, like I had to like look up there a few times throughout the game.
Yeah, I guess steals isn't on the Jumbotron typically. Yeah. So I buy that.
All right.
What it is, you just got to look for it a little bit harder. You know, like the points, rebounds, and assists are like really out there in plain sight, and the steals, you just got to look a little bit harder. I want to ask about your decision to transfer to Arizona from Duquesne. You were the hometown hero, you know, stayed local for college, but then made the decision to go play for Sean Miller at Arizona. I obviously transferred as well, making a jump up in levels. And I'm curious for you what that transition was like. In all honesty, you did it far superior than what I did. You went and started right away, was incredibly impactful, and led one of the best teams in the country to multiple tournament runs. But what do you kind of remember about that decision early on of like wanting to make the jump?
Yeah, I was super nervous. You know, I was sitting there. Our school actually hosted the NCAA tournament that year. You know, at the Pittsburgh Penguins Arena. So I went down with my dad and was sitting there and just saw a bunch of teams play, and it like this light went off in my head. And this is not a shot at Duquesne. I enjoyed my time there. We just weren't really tournament ready, you know, when I was there. So I kind of just said, I want to take a chance and transfer. And, you know, these schools and coaches kept calling, and, you know, I just went on the visit to Arizona, and me and Coach Miller connected right away. The guys connected with me. You know, it was an easy decision, and the style of play was a big thing. He wanted to get out and go and run, and that's the way I like to play. But I feel like, you know, like we only get one shot at this, and to go play on the national stage at Arizona, it was an opportunity I just couldn't pass up.
So couple questions to follow up on that. Did you kind of know what schools would kind of be an option if you did transfer? And then also, was the decision based in, I just want to like compete in the NCAA tournament, or was it like, I want to set myself up to one day play in the NBA or, you know, get drafted? Like what kind of, I imagine there's probably more to it than just one thing, but kind of what was that kind of decision process looking like at that point?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was to want to go play on the biggest stage and compete for a national championship. And, you know, I was actually surprised. You know, I saw a Tucson, Arizona area code come up on my phone, and, you know, I had never talked to Sean Miller up to that point. So when he called, I was like super surprised. And, you know, like we said, he talked to me for like an hour, and we connected over the phone and wanted me to come out for a visit. But like, I'm just being honest. Like when I went to Arizona, I was playing with the Stanley Johnsons of the world, Aaron Gordons, Nick Johnsons, Brandon Ashley, Caleb Tarzuski, the list goes on. And I never thought to myself, like, man, I'm an NBA player. Like I was just trying to be the best point guard I could on those teams and help us try to win a national championship. And it never really dawned on me that I had a chance to play in the NBA until I made the Sixers. So, and I'm not lying. I never thought about it. I thought when my last game, like I was like, I'm going overseas. Like it is what it is.
So after that last game, because I know that pre-draft process, particularly as somebody who's like at best second round, more likely undrafted, because that's kind of the boat that I was in. It can be, you know, nerve-wracking in many ways, just the uncertainty of like, you know, I could be someplace over here in a great situation, or I could be in Latvia. Like literally who knows? The possibilities are endless. What was like that process for you? Was there like any moment where you started to kind of gain some confidence, whether it be in pre-draft workouts? I don't know if you were invited to the combine, were you?
I was the crazy story. I was the last invite, and it was like, they were like, pay your way. And if someone drops out, you can come in. And I was in Chicago not knowing if anyone, and then they called my agent and they were like, someone dropped out. So I got in at the very last minute.
Wow. So like little moments like that, I got to imagine were like big confidence builders of, all right, this seems a whole lot more realistic that I could actually do this.
Yeah. I mean, I played decent in the in the combine. It was the first year they did 5-on-5, and just a funny story. Like they were bringing me in for like my hand measurements and like wingspan, and I'm like, can we just skip this part, man? Like, can we just go to the 5-on-5? Because like I've got a negative wingspan. Like my hands are like the size of a newborn baby's. Like can we just move on and go to the competing stuff? Like that's what's going to help me here. And a humbling moment for sure to see the guy look at me after measuring my hands and my wingspan. But and then going after the combine straight into 18 workouts, for obviously 18 different teams. And I just didn't know what to expect. Didn't hear too much, but had a good workout with Philly. And, they were the first one to call after draft night. And it was hard because I don't know if this happened to you, but I think like 5 or 6 teams wanted to draft me and then send me right overseas. And my agent was like, that's probably not a route you want to do if you want to try to make the NBA, because, they kind of send those guys over there and then they have to come back and restart. And it was hard because you want to hear your name called, but at the same time, you make the decision to kind of bet on yourself and make it through summer league and training camp and go that route.
We're all about the underdog story here, TJ. The fact that you've made it to the NBA with hands the size of a newborn baby is one of the biggest underdog stories I think we've covered. This is episode 41, and we've covered a lot of them. I'm curious for both you guys, what do those pre-draft workouts look like? Like TJ, you're saying you just wanted to get to the 5-on-5. How much is like individual skill work, spot shooting? Like, is there a lot of, are you doing everything? Does it vary on team? Do you know what when you're going into a workout, do you know what to expect?
It definitely varies on team, but you don't know what to expect. I think for the most part, obviously, like standstill shooting and a bunch of different drills, depending on the team you're with. But there's teams that do a conditioning test, and it's incredibly hard. And after a full workout, and then you do the conditioning test, and you're trying to push yourself as hard as you can. I'd say for the most part, though, most teams pretty generally do spot shooting and a bunch of different drills, but not all of them do that test.
TJ, I'm curious if you found in the pre-draft workouts, if it was frustrating for you that you would get matched up with guys that were going to be first-round picks or second-round picks and maybe went on to get drafted, and then you line up with them in that workout setting and get the best of them, play well, defend, your team wins, you play well, all that sort of stuff. But then like you're kind of faced with this reality of like, all right, well, that matters, but it also doesn't really matter, because even if I outplay you in this setting right here, it doesn't mean that I'm going to get called over you on draft night. Because that's something that I kind of like had to deal with in that, like, I felt like I would go into a workout and play really well, and then all of a sudden all these guys that I would see in workouts, and not saying that they like weren't worthy of it, but like they would get drafted because maybe they did have, a crazy wingspan or had all this potential that, myself as a 24-year-old rookie didn't exactly have. Like, are there specific moments or memories, and you don't have to like maybe call anybody out, but like of those types of experiences?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely feel like they're bringing. I mean, I felt like for the most part when I was matched up against those guys, I was kind of like a filler, a guy that they knew I was going to play hard. And this isn't a shot. It's just the reality. Like, they're bringing who they want to see is who they want to see. Like, whether you play well or not, it doesn't really matter. I mean, and that's okay. That's just the reality of it, though. You could have your best workout and you'll impress people and they'll bring you in for like training camp and all that stuff. But if you're not on their radar for the draft boards, I don't think it matters much how well you play, unless you completely destroy the workout.
Yeah, I definitely experienced that as well. You make a great point of like, at that point, it's more so they're just trying to evaluate the guys that they already like, and nothing's really moving the needle one way or another. I want to talk early process Sixers, because you were a pivotal part of the process, the genesis of the process. You really got your start obviously in Philly. Now those teams, they were competitive, but they weren't exactly, running through the Eastern Conference. For you, I imagine it was a great opportunity to gain some footing, gain some experience, be able to play through some mistakes. But was it kind of, somebody who's a consummate winner who's won your entire life, you didn't necessarily get to see your impact materialize into wins. I imagine that that's kind of a bittersweet season, and that it's incredible because you're learning so much, but you're also not really able to move the needle, which is obviously an incredibly tall task to ask of an undrafted rookie in terms of actually getting wins.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this a bunch. As you know, when you play in the NBA and play valuable minutes and play a lot of them, it's all about opportunity and timing. And I feel like if the process wasn't going on and the tanking and stuff like that, I'm not sure I would be in the NBA. I kind of got lucky in the fact that they were trying to find guys on cheap contracts and do a bunch of stuff. And I just found my role there and made the team. And like you said, got valuable minutes, even though we weren't winning. It was tough, but you knew we just weren't good enough to win those games. We didn't have the talent to win those games. We played hard, but that only gets you so far. But in the back of my mind, I was saying to myself, I'm getting valuable experience right now that not a lot of, probably 99% of undrafted rookies would ever get.
At what point in your career, and maybe it's not yet, but I got to imagine now after signing the deal that you did this summer, there's a certain level of comfortability that comes with okay, not that I've arrived, but more so I've established myself as a pro that you can really count on. At what point in your career did you really start to feel that, instead of I know that feeling early on those first 2 years of constantly always looking over your shoulder of all right, am I safe? Am I going to walk into the facility and get waived? Is this going to happen? This, that, or whatever. And I imagine, what makes you great is that you're not comfortable, but that you at least got to the point where you feel established.
Yeah. This is going to sound like I'm lying, but I always like to play my back's up against the wall, because it makes me lock in and play harder. And I've always told myself, if I'm not grinding and playing that way, my back's up against the wall, or this is my last game, I've said to myself, it's time for you to retire when you don't have that mindset anymore. I know I signed the deal that I did, and I've always, I've played in the NBA for 7 years, but I've never truly felt established. I've always weirdly liked the feeling of looking over your shoulder and going out there there's something to prove. I just always like playing that way.
Dunk, do you feel that way? Because now this is year one of you coming off the contract.
He doesn't feel that way.
No, I think, TJ, I think you hit it on the head in terms of there's something about that performance anxiety that brings out the best of people. And I've actually, in a different way, but I'm also not a super crazy athlete. I don't play above the rim. I don't have this ability to impact the game in all these different ways necessarily. So I also really share that sentiment of if I'm not every single game locked in 100% all out, then I'm kind of losing my superpower in some respects, because that's kind of my always being on top of it, always being prepared, ready for every opportunity is kind of, I've always felt what separates me. And I imagine that for you, there are mistakes that other guys can afford to make that, in all honesty, you and I can't afford to make it. And you build a little bit of equity to the point where, like, all right, if you mess up a defensive assignment and you're 1 or 2, you might get yanked, and now you have a little bit more leeway to like kind of play through those moments. But I share the sentiment in that, like, there is something about that, like, that anxiety that like is always over you. And it sounds like it's a negative term, like having that anxiety, but it also is like what makes you feel alive. I know it sounds kind of like corny, but it's like, that's what you want night in and night out, I feel.
No, I agree. It locks me in and it takes me to a different level. Like when I'm anxious every single game, and it's like to me, like when I don't feel that, there's not going to be, like you said, there's not going to be any joy in playing. Like the feeling of going out there and competing and having that anxiety. Like when that ball goes up, there's nothing like locking in and getting ready to go. And, to your point, like the established part, like when I signed the contract, there was a sense of relief because I always have my family in the back of my mind, my wife and my son. And I'm like, okay, they're good. So now it's time to, that relief is gone. Like that's over with. But like the anxiety that you talk about, it's a different anxiety when you sign something like that, or what you signed. You want to show that you're worth it. And it takes that anxiety that you talk about to another level. I thought that it was going to be like, okay, I got this 4-year deal. And it was like, no, that anxiety just went to another level, and it makes you want to lock in even more.
I was going to say, yeah, I've certainly felt that it ramps up, and something I've navigated or tried to learn how to navigate this year is it's a newfound pressure. And people can say like, oh, like just go out and play, just go out and do this. But like, the part of who I am is like, now that once you ink that, it's like, all right, well, I want to go out and like earn it every single fucking night. I don't want to just like chill and be like, I'm good now. I can't relate to the sentiment of having a wife or a son. But I do have to imagine, once you do put pen to paper on that, that's got to be a surreal moment of like, all right, my family, my wife, my kids, like everybody is now taken care of because I can put a ball in a hoop or prevent somebody from putting a ball in a hoop. I mean, that's got to be something that maybe you probably never even imagined would be possible. I know I never did.
No, I mean, I completely agree with you. I never thought I'd be in the NBA, let alone signing a 4-year deal worth the amount that I did. And I'm forever grateful. But my wife is just like, she's a superhero. She takes care of our son by herself for the most part. People don't see that. We're on the road a ton. We're at practice. We're never really home. So the significant others, they're superheroes, and she's been absolutely amazing, just holding down the fort, while I'm gone. I can't thank her enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to your wife. I'm sorry I don't know her name.
Valerie.
Valerie. Shout out to Valerie. I have another question as it pertains to big contracts and playing in the NBA, and I'm curious because one of my favorite things, whenever we interact, I love the fact that like you're just a regular guy. And then that's not to say that other NBA players aren't, but like we very much exist in this, I kind of call it like a fantasy world of like crazy amounts of money and this luxurious travel and all these crazy opportunities and experiences. How do you kind of like stay grounded and just kind of stay true to the Pittsburgh kid that grew up loving basketball? Like what helps you kind of step out of this fantasy land of the NBA and just kind of stay true to who you are?
I feel like you can kind of say the same thing, where I try not to forget where I came from, and everyone who was there for me before I played in the NBA and stuff like that. Like I hate shopping. I live in sweats. Like I don't like fashion. Like the only thing I really spend money on is wine. And you can thank JJ for that. But I don't know, man. It's just going out every day and like it takes so much energy to be a bad person. Like I just try to live my day and be as good to people as I can, you know, treat them well, and not let this get too serious and let it go to my head. I don't think I'd ever let that happen.
You're clearly a good person for saying that, because I actually sometimes think it takes a lot of energy to be a good person. So the fact that you feel the opposite says a lot about who you are. I know that you're a big wine guy just from your relationship with JJ. If you could have a glass of wine with anyone in the NBA right now, competitor or teammate, you could just sit down and have a glass of wine with them. Who are you choosing?
Greg Popovich.
Ooh,
Great answer.
it's a good answer. Yeah. Can't argue that.
He is, I don't know, a wine god, if you will, in more than just NBA circles. You know, I've talked to him throughout the years. He's a great guy, but his love for wine is like something that I hope to be like, you know, when I'm done playing. He said something to me when we were in the bubble, and it was insane because he's probably one of the best coaches ever. And he goes, you know, this is a job. My real passion is food and wine. And you just kind of take a step back and you're like, but you're like the greatest coach of all time. So like, you're not taking this too seriously. And it's just like, it's crazy, man. When you hear stuff like that, it's, I was super humbled and loved hearing it from a guy like that.
Have you gotten any good pop stories from Doug McDermott? I know I'm sure he's been popping open some bottles of wine with Pop since he's been down there. So I'm curious if you've heard anything.
I haven't heard too many stories, but you know, we played them and Dougie wasn't there, but he said the pop dinners when there's wine flowing at these great restaurants there, he said they're remarkable. So I told Pop, I was like, can I get an invite to one of these dinners? You know, I need to be there. You know, I'll sit at the coach's table, just pick your brain a little bit. You know, we got a good laugh out of it.
Speaking of being at the coach's table, is that something that could be in your future? I mean, I feel like you probably get put in that box all the time, like, oh, he's a future coach, plays like a future coach, all that sort of stuff. Is it something you've thought about or want to pursue?
Yeah, I've definitely thought about it. You know, as you know, we travel a ton as players and spend a lot of time from our family. I'm not sure. I think I'll cross that bridge, you know, when I have to. If the right opportunity presents itself, you know, me and my wife have talked about, you know, doing something like that. But if it's not the right opportunity, I don't know if I'm going to do it.
Speaking of which, is it true that in Philly, Bryan Colangelo thought that you were a coach, that you were an assistant?
All right. It's actually a funny story. You know, after my rookie year, you know, I was kind of on cloud nine. I was back home with my boys, and in Pittsburgh, you know, you drink beer. That's what it is. And I went home, and you know, me and the boys, we were drinking beers a lot. And
as you do,
yeah. So I came back. This is pre-wine love. I don't mess with the beer anymore, but I came back probably a little huskier than I should have been. And we were playing pickup one day, and Bryan Colangelo, mind you, this is his first year with the Sixers. And so I made a good impression naturally, you know, him walking in, and he was like, why is an assistant coach, you know, playing pickup right now? And they were like, that's TJ McConnell. And when I heard that story, I almost fell over laughing. But it's just like one of those, like, what the hell, man? Like, that's just like my luck, but you know, self-inflicted as well.
What's the Pittsburgh native beer of choice?
Iron City.
Love it.
You've never heard of it, have you?
I've never heard of it, but it's just so fitting. It's beautiful.
I'm gonna get you a case. Don't worry.
I can't wait to crush some Iron City with you in the future. TJ, thank you for coming on. You're the man. I appreciate your presence and taking the time on your road trip to talk to us.
No, I appreciate you guys, man, and look forward to seeing you down the road, my guy.